Mounce, BBG, chapter 20, sentence 8. Just a few more to go in this chapter. Easy enough for it to start with Allah, but, and if you recognize tis, someone or anyone, then you get to this verb and you kind of go, what do I do with this? Well, hopefully, if you spent some time again with chapter 20, you know that there are certain verbs that radically change their form when they go to the future stem. And hopefully you remember me saying that the upside to that is it's very few verbs, and they're pretty common verbs, you know, like ericamai, which is I come, going to elusamai, I will come, both deponent. That's such a common. I mean, how many times would you talk about something like that in the New Testament? Very, very common verb. Here's another one, and in case you don't recognize, it's from Lego. And Lego in the present, which is I say, goes to arrow in the future. And if you think about that, how common would it be in the New Testament to talk about I say or I will say? I mean, you know, it's another one of those verbs that you're just going to encounter over and over and over again. So, you know, yes, you have to memorize the different stems to think about what that looks like. But once you do, you're going to encounter them so often that it'll just reinforce your knowledge. So that's just not a big deal. Other thing to notice here is when you say arrow, you should recognize that as a liquid verb. So you have that hint that when you combine that liquid consonant with the circumflex, that you're probably talking about a liquid future, which in this case you certainly are. Third singular ending should be very obvious, so that agrees with the subject. You know, so you have subject-verb agreement. And again, it's a future from Lego, so will say, you know, third singular, he will say, but someone. So, but someone or anyone, in this case, probably go with someone the way we would say, but someone will say. Someone will say. So again, from Lego, and one of those verbs that you're going to encounter a lot. So you just need to know what the future stem looks like. Post how. Hopefully you recognize that. Then if you go down to this end of the sentence, because post, you're probably expecting a question mark. Guess what? You got a question mark. So you know it's a question. How. Then if you go to look here and you say, you know, hoy, that's looking like a subject. Yep, it is. And it's the dead or the dead ones. Piece that make a good exam question is hoi necroi. You look at that and you say, well, okay, that's the subject, but guess what? It's not a noun. It's an adjective. So as soon as you say that, you need to be able to say that that is a substantival adjective. Substantival adjective because it's an adjective with nothing else around it that it's modifying, and the fact that it has its own definite article. That combination, no other noun around that it's modifying, plus the definite article, means substantival adjective. So you've got a substantival adjective for the subject, and it's how are the dead, and then you're expecting a third plural verb, which is what you have here, right? And then you say, well, it's got a passive ending. Is it passive or active? Is, you know, in terms of, is it deponent? Well, you think about the verb, and the verb is agero. Well, agero is not deponent, which means that this really is passive. So you want to make sure that you translate it passively. So instead of how do the dead raise, it's how are the dead raised? How are they raised? So, you know, with that past participle, okay? Present equative verb plus past participle equals a present passive. So you've got this, how are the dead raised? Okay? Question mark. And there's your question mark at the end of that sentence. All right? And then you go down and you go, okay, I'm looking at another question. So in that case, you say, you know, in what sort or in what kind of, and then you have the post positive day, but, you know, as one sentence, second sentence, you know, you probably expect this to be and, unless there's some kind of a contrast going on, you're probably just going to run with and here, and that's what I would do here. And in what kind or what sort of body, right? In what kind of body, and then you have this third plural again, but guess what? This is from erchomai, so this really is a deponent. So even though it's third plural and it's got a passive ending, in this case, you're going to translate it actively because this comes from erchomai, which is a deponent. So in this case, it's in what kind of body do they come? Again, to make it a question, make sure that you ask that as a question. Do they come? All right. So running back to the front and going all the way through, but someone will say, how are the dead raised? Making sure you translate that passively. And post-positive day, and in what kind of body do they come? Question mark.